What's up, everybody? This is Dustin Zimmerman with Game Time Discussions, and welcome back to another episode of our college football weekly recap and look ahead at the next week. Usually, I'm here co hosting with Emory, and today, obviously, he's not here. That is because his wife is expected to give birth very soon. Congratulations to them. He's obviously going to have his hands pretty full. So, what we're going to do is I'm just going to present solo for a while, and he's just going to text me his thoughts, and I'll relay those to y'all. He is still doing his Superdog picks, of course, because we love doing those. And then we're just talking about football all the time, basically, because we both just love watching football and enjoying it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just let y'all know when he sends me things that he wants added, that he wanted to make a point of, which one of them very specific today will come up. And we'll talk about that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So apologies for any technical issues. Emory is usually the one doing the technical part and the presenting. So let me get that pulled up. There we go. All right, so coming into the week, here are the AP Top 25 rankings from last week coming into this weekend. So we talked about these last week. We talked about the movers. We talked about who went up, who went down, who stayed the same, who dropped out. So we'll go ahead and keep on moving. Our games to recap. So big one, Texas Tech and Utah, the 11 a.m. kick. This game was a really good one going into the second half, and then Utah kind of just fell apart. Baron Morton for Texas Tech got injured, and then Will Hammond had to come in and take over for him, which he did an excellent job taking over for the injured Baron Morton. I'm really proud of him. The offensive line stepped up big. Tech's defense, which has always been suspect, and Emory and I always talked about that, how their big issue wasn't offense. They're going to score the ball as much as they want to. It was their defense, and holding a good Utah team with Devin Dampier, who Emory's very high on. I'm also high on, not as high as Emory is, but he really likes Devin Dampier. He had 2 picks and 162 yards. So Tech did a really good job stopping him. Their O-line was fantastic. All around, Tech kind of took over. At halftime, this game was actually 10-3. Nobody scored in the third quarter, and then Tech went off 24-7 in the fourth quarter. So Tech expected to move up, and when we look at our new AP rankings, we'll see how much. Auburn and Oklahoma was another fantastic game. You had Jackson Arnold returning to Oklahoma, where he transferred from last year. He's now the starting quarterback at Auburn. This game was also neck and neck. A lot to be said about the umpiring, the refereeing in this one. There were some calls I thought probably should have gone Auburn's way, but at the same time, Auburn got sacked 10 times, and I cannot expect a team to win a football game when they get sacked 10 times. That is just abysmal. Part of that on the O-line, of course, part of that is on Jackson Arnold. Got to get rid of the ball. One player I want to mention on Auburn, though, was Cam Coleman, their wide receiver, 3 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown, but he just looks so good when you're watching him. He clearly passes the eye test. Guy's fantastic, and I expect him to continue to grow. He's only a sophomore, so he's got a lot of development left for him, but he's already a fantastic receiver. On the other side for Oklahoma, John Mateer with 271 yards and a touchdown, no picks. He also had 10 rushes for 29 yards and a touchdown, one of them being the game-changing one at the end where they actually took the lead on it, and then they furthered that lead. He did lose a fumble in this game, so one thing to just watch out for. But otherwise, the defense looked fantastic. R. Mason Thomas, who we've talked about, had 2 sacks. Jaden Jackson had 2.5 sacks. Oklahoma appears to have figured out some things with Brent Venables. They've done a complete 180 from last year, and they're an absolute team to be reckoned with. Michigan, Nebraska lived up to the hype that we expected it to. We expected it to be a very close game. We actually expected Nebraska to win, though, and that did not happen. So Michigan, watching the game in the first half, was dominating on both sides of the ball. Nebraska actually tied it, though, right before going into halftime with a Hail Mary, which was an interesting decision on Michigan's part to allow that to happen by not taking timeouts sooner and getting the ball back. And Nebraska for not trying to push the ball downfield faster. It ended up working out for Mini Mahomes, Dylan Raiola, though. That being said, Bryce Underwood was the better quarterback in this game, in my opinion. He had a long rush. He was throwing the ball well, a couple drops from his receivers. I think if Michigan can get the defense further figured out and get the receivers to develop, they're going to be really good this year. Obviously, the big thing here was that their receivers not playing as well, and Dylan Raiola threw the ball 41 times. He actually had 30 completions. His QBR was slightly lower than Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood just had the rushing upside with his. Rayola played very well. He did have one pick. It got tipped up. It was a tip drill pick. Amazing game overall, but Michigan really impressed me. We just need to see their young guys grow a little bit more as they head into further Big Ten action. Florida, Miami. Honestly, not a whole lot to say about this one. Miami dominated today or last night. I'm filming this on Sunday. So they've proven me wrong. That is one area that I did not expect Miami to be as good as they have been this year, and they've been dominant so far. Carson Beck only 17 for 30 with one pick, not his best showing. That being said, Mark Fletcher, their running back, had a fantastic game, and then Shamar Brown also had 18 rushes for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. DJ Lagway coming off multiple picks against LSU. This game 12 for 23 for 61 yards. Whatever is going on with Florida, we talked about them at the beginning of the year. Emory and I both think they have a ton of talent. Their problem, in my opinion, is they're not using that talent properly. They have the facilities, they have the recruiting, they should be developing guys. And I don't know if it's more of an issue with the development, with the game plan. Feel free to leave your comments down below on what you think the biggest issue for Florida is. Their strength of schedule is obviously hard, but when you're throwing multiple picks and then only having 61 yards from a guy who looked like he was a promising young quarterback last year, and this year just hasn't taken any steps up, and he's healthy this year compared to last year when he was repeatedly injured. It's very confusing. But Miami looked really good on both sides of the ball as they have all year. So no surprise they come away with the win. Billy Napier's seat gets even hotter. South Carolina, Missouri was a fun one. This was the Lenore Sellers versus the Missouri Tigers. That's pretty much what this one came down to. The Sellers did not have a whole lot of help. As we've said repeatedly, he is extremely talented. He is coming off of an injury, though, which did not help him. And Missouri has impressed me a lot. Emory was higher on Missouri than I was, but their backfield is arguably one of the best in the country. With Ahmad Hardy, I've got to completely give it to Emory and give up that Ahmad Hardy's the best running back in the conference, and likely one of the best, if not the best running back in the nation. Guy's insane, went for 22 rushes for 138 yards and a touchdown. And then we talked about this last week when they beat Kansas, that Jamal Roberts also went for 13 rushes, 76 yards and a touchdown. Both of them had over 100 yards against Kansas. That's a backfield I don't think a lot of people expected the entire backfield to be so good, but they've played very well. And then Bo Prabula also added 9 rushes for 72 yards. Sellers went 18 for 28, 302 yards, 2 touchdowns. He played really well. We're looking for Nick Harbor. We talked about him. He's an amazing athlete. 3 catches for 45 yards. Vandrivius Jacobs did have 7 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown. But in the end, Missouri was just too good, and they came out on top 29-20. Now, this one's going to hurt me to say because Emory and I went back and forth a little bit on the Indiana-Illinois game. I thought Illinois would win this game. At the time we recorded this last week, Indiana was a 3-point favorite. Before kickoff yesterday morning, Indiana was a 7-point favorite. I stuck with my guns, picked Illinois to win outright. I'm expecting Luke Altmaier to have a great game and them to come out on top. That didn't happen, to say the least. Indiana absolutely stomped Illinois. This was not at all how I expected this game to go. I knew Indiana was good. I think Fernando Mendoza is good. Emory said Fernando Mendoza way before I did, so shout out to him. Fernando Mendoza went 21 for 23 and 5 touchdowns. He did whatever he wanted on the field. He was fantastic, and Illinois just did not get it going. Luke Altmaier, 14 for 22, 146 yards and a touchdown. They only had 3 guys with rushes, a total of 20 carries. Indiana had 49 carries. Just not a whole lot of performance from Illinois. And I think part of that is more to say that Indiana was that impressive. Putting up 63 on a conference foe who is the number 9 team in the country, in the Big Ten, no less, where you expect to see it more defense than offense as a generalization, is just absolutely wild. So Kurt Signetti once again proves that he just wins. Watch his press conferences. They're always a fun show. Watch Windiana, apparently. Just like last year, they're turning heads, except this year they're winning big games. Last year they failed in those. This time, at least their first big game this year, they absolutely dominate after earlier struggling with Old Dominion. So still, got to figure, we're early in the season, a lot to be figured out for both of these teams, how good or bad either one is. But as of now, absolutely incredible showing from Indiana. Last game of the week. Coming into the week, we expected Ole Miss and Tulane to be awesome. It was going to be a shootout. We were going to see high scoring. We saw half of that. Ole Miss, high scoring, 45 points. They absolutely dominated, though. I believe it was 23-3 at halftime. And they had Trinidad Chambliss starting. If you didn't know, Austin Simmons is injured. Chambliss actually started their last game, too, against Arkansas. He was starting this week too due to Austin Simmons' injury, and he's done nothing but impress. The guy's absolutely balling out. This week he went 17 for 27, 2 touchdowns, a 90.1 QBR, which is insane. A guy me and Emory are both high on, Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback for Tulane, 5 for 17, 56 yards. So he did not do much. Ole Miss's defense, the Landshark defense, maybe it's back from several years ago when they kind of took over on defense more than offense. Now they've got both rolling. Not to mention, Trinidad Chambliss also had 14 carries for 112 yards. So he's looking amazing. I almost wonder if this is going to cause a little QB battle once Austin Simmons does return from injury. With how well Chambliss is playing. That's yet to be seen, though. We'll actually talk about Ole Miss's upcoming week game because they are again in our games of the week once we get to that. All right, my biggest errors. Illinois. I mean, let's just start there. I was completely wrong. There's not much to be said. Emory deserves all the shout outs. This is one of those things where I mentioned he's going to text me things I have to absolutely include. This is one of them. He said to make sure I fully admitted that I was wrong about Illinois. Here you go, Emory. Make sure to timestamp this, take a screenshot, video it, whatever you want to do so you can keep this over my head forever. Tulane, they got smacked by Ole Miss. I don't think either of us really saw that coming. And then I need to go ahead and talk about it now. Virginia Tech, maybe one of the worst predictions of my entire college football knowledge and information and watching lifetime. They got a new coach. We'll see how it goes next week once they start playing. Again, they were on bye, which is probably for the best with how things have gone. They beat Wofford. 38-6. Or no, yeah, 38-6. Their next game is going to be NC State, who just lost to Duke. So that'll be interesting to see how they bounce back, what happens next, if there's a culture shift, if they can get back to the Virginia Tech they used to be. Clemson for our last error of the week. And this one, Emory, you are being roped into also because we together picked Clemson to win the national title. That is who we expected to take over with all their talent and Dabo Swinney, and started to use the transfer portal, got Will Helt, one of the top edges in the country. Clemson's 1-3. They just lost to Syracuse at home by multiple scores. And Syracuse had to beat UConn in overtime. Clemson very well could have been 0-4. They were down 16-0 to Troy. Whatever's going on with Clemson, I'm not going to say Dabo Swinney's on the hot seat yet because he has recent success. We're going to talk about some hot seats in a second. I didn't want to put him on that because he has enough recent success, multiple playoffs, obviously. We expected them to be a national championship contender. Nothing like that. But I don't know what's going on there. It almost feels like the Florida State year last year when they went 2-10. Is Clemson going to bounce back? What is going to happen when they hit conference play? It's been embarrassing to say the least because of their expectations, similar to how Florida State's was last year. All right, that's the last dig I'll give to Emory because he made me admit how wrong I was about Illinois. So a lot yet to be seen, but a lot to be said about what's happened so far. Our seat's getting hotter. My number one hot seat in the country right now is Luke Fickell, Wisconsin. I talked about it after they got absolutely steamrolled by Alabama this week. And if you saw in the Discord, I shouted out this spread pick, Maryland plus 10. Well, they went ahead and just absolutely stomped Wisconsin. Maryland ended up winning the game 27-10. And if you watched it, it looked like a much bigger lead than that. Luke Fickell was highly touted in 2022. Was supposed to continue the Wisconsin improvement that had been happening, take him to that next level. He's completely ruined everything that had been built up for the last 10, 15 years there. So he's my number one hot seat. My number two hot seat, maybe 1A, Luke Fickell, 1B, is Mike Gundy for Oklahoma State. Now, we know Mike Gundy for a lot of things. Success on the field, his press conferences, talking about how he's how he's a man, he's 40, all that. His time has passed. We're past the Mike Gundy era now. Nick Saban got out basically at the peak, and he said he could not handle all the changes that were coming. And part of that was he just didn't agree with some of them. Part of that was he knew his time and his culture and everything just wasn't how we're seeing the NCAA change with transfer portal and NIL and all that. Mike Gundy is in that boat now. It's time that we move on. Oklahoma State needs to go ahead and pay the buyout. The question becomes who gets fired first, Luke Fickell or Mike Gundy. As of now, last week when we made the video, we had heard some of the announcements of the coaches that were fired. This week, we haven't heard anything yet. We'll see. My bet is on Luke Fickell, mainly because Mike Gundy's been at Oklahoma State for so long. I think there's a chance they just kind of keep him around because the season's, as far as playoff, conference championship, that stuff, that's gone. It's not going to happen. They just lost to Tulsa. I think Luke Fickell goes first, and they give Gundy his farewell tour, if you will, even though it's not going to be a very happy one with how things are going. That's my expectation. Let me know in the comments what y'all think, or if someone else's seat is even hotter than theirs. And then I always have to give a shout out to good old Billy Napier. Like I said earlier with Florida, it's not a talent issue. They've got all the talent in the world. Their strength of schedule is hard, yeah, but they're playing horribly. There's no development from last year. They have Trey Wilson, they have DJ Lagway, they have Tyreek Sapp, all these studs on defense, offense, and they're doing absolutely nothing with it. His seat has to be getting hotter. I know they already announced that he's not going to get fired this year. I believe they put out a statement after last week's loss to LSU that Napier would be the coach all year. The school did, which is an interesting decision to do that in the first 4 weeks of football, but it is what it is. I don't expect him to be fired before the other two. That being said, let me know in the comments if you've got anyone else that needs to be added to our hot seat list. All right, Superdog recaps. So I unfortunately fell asleep because this game didn't end until like 1 o'clock in the morning here, and I had to check the score the next day. But my boy Aiden Childs and Michigan State did pull off the Superdog pick. So big win there. They lost 45-31, but I had them at a 14.5 point spread. Shout out Aiden Childs. And we're actually going to talk about a guy from USC here in just a second. But huge win there. Very happy about that. If you placed that bet, I'm glad. Congratulations. You won some money. Emory Superdog. We went 2-0, both by half a point, which I think is almost more impressive because I could have played this off as, yeah, we know who's going to just barely squeak in and stuff. No, we felt good about these ones. There's a reason we look for picks that are right on possession lines, such as at 14 points or 10.5, 14.5, 17.5, 21.5, that kind of thing. because you can get this type of situation, commonly ending scores, and that's what we did. So great call from Emory. Colorado looks like they're going to stick with Caden Salter as their starting quarterback now. But either way, the boys went 2-0 this week on our Superdogs. We'd love to see that. Emory's still searching for his first outright winner. I'm hoping to get more outright winners. None this week, but got to be happy that we both won our picks. Prospect spotlight. So like I mentioned, Makai Lemon, 8 catches, 127 receiving yards, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown. Watching him last year, you could kind of see him developing. Watching him this year, he's developed. He's a fantastic athlete, insanely fast, quick, can leap. He's a guy we're expecting to rise up draft boards as far as the wide receivers go. He's already pretty much high up on the wide receiver list, but he just continues to impress. He needs to keep developing in that Lincoln Riley offense, continue to help his draft status, but so far this year, he has not disappointed whatsoever, and he deserved a shout out for his play last night. Our new AP Top 25 rankings. So, Ohio State stays at number 1. Miami leapfrogs Penn State and LSU, which is kind of cool. Very interesting to see that. Obviously, it's because of their absolute stomping of Florida. And that I need to explain. They won 26-7. It was another one of those. If you were watching it, at no point did you think that Florida had a chance. It was one of those things. Penn State and LSU both fall one spot. Penn State was off. It happens. LSU was playing Southeastern Louisiana. It's just from Miami winning. And let me go ahead and pull up actually what we're looking at next. Ohio State, their next game is going to be at Washington. We're going to talk about that one more in a minute. Miami, they are going to be off this week. They get a bye. Penn State's going to have a big game. They're hosting Oregon, who you see at our number 6 position. LSU is going to be at Ole Miss, so another huge game there. Georgia is going to be hosting Alabama. So lots of big games here in the top 10, and we're going to talk about all of those in just a second. Oklahoma coming off their big win against Auburn. They move up to number 7. They're going to be off this week. They get a bye. Florida State continues to impress. They beat Kent State 66-10. They didn't have any punts. They're going to be at Virginia this week. This doesn't feel like a game that needs to be game of the week. This Florida State's, I expect them to win by at least 3 possessions against Virginia. A&M on a bye week somehow moves up to number 9. Not really sure how. They end up having their school university president step down, but they leapfrog the Longhorns. Don't know why Texas stomped Sam Houston State. I really don't understand this flip-flop here, aside from trying to hype up the A&M versus Auburn game, I guess. But yeah, that's what the AP writers decided, and you know, I'm not writing the AP polls. I'm simply explaining what came of them and what we're looking at next. Texas, like I said, stomps Sam Houston State 55-0. I want to give a quick shout out to Arch Manning. Not because I'm super impressed by beating Sam Houston State by 55, but because I don't want to continue to say things for narrative's sake. I've been down on Arch Manning all year so far. His mechanics have looked bad. His confidence didn't seem to be there. But I mean, you got to give credit where it's due. He played a lot better last night, 18 for 21 for 309 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns. Seems to have gotten his confidence back. Texas is going to be on bye this week, and then they'll start heading into SEC play. And that'll be a real good tell of where Arch is at, what's going on there. Indiana is now number 11. Absolutely no surprise that they would move up in the rankings, given that they absolutely mollywopped good old Illinois. And if you look down, Illinois is all the way down at 23. They were at 9, deservedly so. Tech moves up to number 12 after routing Utah. Ole Miss, they stomped Tulane, as we talked about from last week's one of the game of the week. And then this week, like I said, they're going to be hosting LSU. Iowa State, they were off. They dropped 2 spots. Again, it's just because other teams moved up, not so much because they moved down. And Tennessee down at 15. So they just beat UAB. They're going to be playing at Mississippi State next. Georgia Tech moves up 2 spots. They also beat Temple 45-24. Their next game is going to be at Wake Forest, getting into conference play. Alabama drops 3 spots for not playing. It is what it is, just how it goes. Their next game, like I said, it's going to be at Georgia, so huge game there. Vanderbilt does not lose to the curse of Georgia State this year. If you remember last year, they got upset by Georgia State. This year, they smack them 70-21, and they're going to be hosting Utah State, who played A&M a few weeks ago. Michigan gets their big win at Nebraska, huge road win for the freshman QB Bryce Underwood. They're going to be on bye this week and then starting into Big Ten play. Missouri beats South Carolina at home 29-20. They move up 3 spots. They're going to be playing Massachusetts next. USC moves up 4 behind Makai Lemon and Jaden Mayava. They beat Michigan State 45-31. Their next game is going to be at Illinois, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. That game would have been a little bit more hype had Illinois just not gotten smacked. Notre Dame beats Purdue 56-30. Honestly, with Notre Dame, I expect a bigger win in that situation. You're coming off a big loss to A&M by a point after losing your first game to Miami. They have something to prove. They don't have a good strength of schedule. It's a very, very weak strength of schedule. They need to be winning the games they should win by a lot of points, by the amount they should. They need to win all their games to make the playoff. If they have another loss, it's completely over. Their chances have already dropped. And as we get into further weeks, we'll start doing what we did last year. We start showing probabilities and percentages of teams to get in and different scenarios and whatnot. But their next game is going to be at Arkansas, which will be a super fun one because Arkansas is coming off an embarrassing loss, which I'll get into more in just a minute. Illinois, like I said, loses badly to Indiana. They're now going to host USC. You just got to hope things don't go from bad to worse. TCU, super impressive win over SMU, 35-24. Josh Hoover absolutely balled out and actually elevated himself into Heisman contention based on FanDuel odds, which we'll go over in just a second, or at the end of our video, rather. But TCU looked really good. The Hypnotoad is absolutely rolling. We're going to see what they can do as they go into conference play. Their next game is going to be at Arizona State, who's coming off a big win over Baylor by 3 points. Lastly, BYU, they beat East Carolina 34-13. It was expected to be a closer game, but they looked fantastic. Their next game is going to be at Colorado. Caden Salter is expected to be the starter for Colorado, so that'll be fun to see what BYU can do. And then the teams, just to mention the ones that dropped out, Utah dropped out after getting smacked by Texas Tech. And then Auburn was at 22. They dropped out. They actually have the most other receiving votes at 122. One team I wanted to shout out real quick and the other receiving votes, North Texas, the Mean Green, get 2 votes. I did my grad school at a North Texas school, and then our buddy Steiger did his undergrad at North Texas. So we always like to root for the Mean Green. So super cool to see them make an appearance. I did not expect to see that. So fantastic news. And they're coming off a big win over Army in overtime. Like I said, our games of the week. I already mentioned a lot of these just because a lot of ranked teams end up being the games of the week. Those are the ones that are going to be the most fun, highly anticipated, just kind of how it works. USC is going to be at Illinois. All of these, the team on the left is away, the team on the right is home. Number 21 versus number 23. USC right now is a 6.5 point favorite. And given recent performances handling Michigan State and Illinois getting embarrassed by Indiana, I would expect USC to go ahead and win this game. And I actually think they'll cover the spread. I think their offense looks a lot better than I kind of expected it to with how poor it's been the last couple of years. And Illinois doesn't look like they can stop anything. at this point. So they couldn't play flag football with how it went against Indiana. So I'm going to take Jaden Mayava, Makai Lemon, Lincoln Riley. As much as fun as I've made of him, his seed is actually cooled off, not as hot of a seed anymore. But he's got to win the big games here. Give me USC -6.5. Notre Dame, Arkansas. Notre Dame bounces back, gets a win. Sorry, I'm getting out of breath and dry mouth because I'm talking just by myself here. Notre Dame bounces back with a big win against Purdue. Purdue, by the way, did run an incredible play where they handed off to the running back, and right before he got to the line of scrimmage, threw it back to the quarterback who ran into the flat after handing it off. It was a really fun play. It's one of those I always thought about doing it on a college football video game, but could never get the pitch button to do it. They actually did it in real life and made it look smooth. It was really cool. But that said, Notre Dame still has one of the best running back duos in the country in Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love. And as much fun as everyone's made of Notre Dame, I think we all do need to remember they lost by one score to Miami in Miami, and then by 1 to A&M in a controversial ending at that. They're obviously still a good team. Marcus Freeman's still a really good coach. CJ Carr is going to keep figuring things out. He's going to improve throughout the year. Arkansas, on the other hand, is coming off back-to-back losses. Ole Miss 2 weeks ago, and then this past Saturday, they lost to Memphis. In both games, they had a drive in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, where they could have taken the lead on the drive, and they fumbled it away. Against Memphis, there was, I think, a minute and a half left, and they handed off. They're just running down the clock. They're down by 1. A field goal gives them the lead. A touchdown obviously gives them the lead. And he reaches out, and the running back's knee was on a defender as he was going down. A Memphis player punched it out, and they ended up running it out. Their redshirt freshman quarterback had to come in for a play because Memphis' starter his helmet popped off, so he had to sit out for a play, and Memphis ended up winning the game just running it out. Arkansas's morale can't be high after that. Sam Pittman is someone we can put on the hot seat list. I wanted to take him off it because Taylon Green, their quarterback, is really good. I expected Arkansas to actually improve this year on last year, and they just haven't so far. And I mean, things where you're having issues at the end, some of it is really poor luck. Arkansas could easily be 4-0 right now if they don't have those 2 fumbles. But because they do, they're not. They're 2-2, and they scored 3 points in the second half against Memphis. Now, Memphis has won 4 straight Power 4 conference games, which is awesome. They're not someone I'm saying should have been a cupcake by any means. They're a good team. But Arkansas has to win those games. That game's expected to prepare them for the games like Notre Dame and then conference. Give me Notre Dame -6.5, and I really don't think it'll be that close. I think Notre Dame will control this game quite easily. Ohio State, Washington. I'm going to talk about a little bit here and then a little bit later. They actually pop in another segment. Excuse me. Ohio State has looked very good. They're number 1. Emory and I are high on Washington, probably higher than other people are. At least I don't hear as much chatter about them. I continue to be high on their coach, Jed Fish. Their quarterback, Damon Williams Jr., is really good. And Ohio State still has the freshman Julian Sayin, and he just does not have that much experience yet. That being said, he's looked good, but he does have 8 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Jeremiah Smith is looking awesome. Carnell Tate has looked really good. Their defense, Caleb Downs, obviously looks fantastic. Washington is 3-0, though. They're playing well. I think this game is probably going to be closer. Washington has smacked their opponents. They beat Colorado State 38-21, UC Davis 70-10, Washington State 59-24 last night in Washington State. Obviously, that's not a very far trip for them because they're in the same state. That being said, I do think Ohio State wins, and I'll give my spread prediction in just a minute. LSU and Ole Miss. So we've talked about LSU and Ole Miss multiple times already in multiple episodes. Heard us talk about Garrett Nussmeier earlier. I was talking about Trinidad Chambliss taking over for Austin Simmons. You all at this point, if you're watching, have seen me or seen our other videos too, have seen me talk about Lane Kiffin, my love-hate relationship with him. It hurts me to love Lane as much as I do. He's so funny and just fun. But some of his antics also annoy me to no end. And he has issues winning the games he should win easily. He's already gotten past the Kentucky hump. No Kentucky curse there. Smacks Tulane. I'm not that high on Nussmeier, and LSU being number 3 in general, I'm not that high on. Before I continue, the spread picks here are what ESPN had reported, but I've also seen multiple of them move multiple points already. So just a heads up, this may change prior to kickoff. Right now, ESPN had Ole Miss at -2.5 because the game is going to be in Oxford, Mississippi. And I got to go with it. I think I'm going to take Ole Miss in this one. They've looked good. They're dominating teams. Well, I didn't expect them to dominate Tulane, but they did. They're going to be hosting LSU, who I'm just not that high on. And I think LSU's actually, let me fix that. I didn't realize they were number 4. All right. So, I just don't think LSU is as good as number 4 in the country. And I'm going to take Ole Miss on this one. But yeah, give me Lane Kiffin, Trinidad Chambliss, and Ole Miss at home against LSU. And I do think they'll cover that spread, that 2.5 point spread. Indiana, Iowa. So, the rankings didn't save on this screen. Okay, for sake of time, I'm just going to take off the rankings for now, and I'll just explain them. All right. Indiana moving up to number 11. They're going to play Iowa with starting quarterback Mark Gronowski. Indiana is currently -6.5. I don't trust a Kirk Ferentz offense against the Kurt Signetti Indiana offense in terms of going who can score more, if that's what this turns into. I think Indiana wins this one. Mark Gronowski's fun to watch. He makes plays. He's an absolute gamer. Add him to gamer watch list for sure, if you remember our superlatives from last week. But I think Fernando Mendoza, is better. I think Kurt Signetti is going to coach a better game plan. And I know this game's in Iowa. I don't think their home field advantage is that impactful compared to some other schools. I'm going to take Indiana -6.5, led by Fernando Mendoza. Penn State, Oregon. This is going to be the number 3 team versus the number 6 team. It's in Penn State. If you remember from our preseason picks, I had Penn State going undefeated. They have scared me a little bit. They have not looked as impressive as I'd like. I need Big Game James to get over the big game hump. It's time for Big Game James to lead Penn State to a program-defining win this year. If they can win this game, they set the table for themselves to go on and go undefeated. That being said, Dante Moore, Oregon, their receivers are getting better. Dan Lanning's a really good coach. They are absolutely stomping everyone they're playing. Their closest game was against Northwestern at Northwestern, and they still won by 20. That said, Northwestern's not good. They should have won by more. So let's look at their other games around it. Oklahoma State, 69-3. Bye-bye, Mike Gundy. Oregon State, 41-7. There goes any semblance of a fun rivalry game, which is why I didn't even talk about it last week. Even though I love rivalries, it was pointless because Oregon State's Oregon State. I think Penn State wins an extremely close game. I would not take the -3.5 because I would not be surprised if this is a field goal game. And I'll go ahead and stamp that. I would take Oregon +3.5. If it changes to Penn State -2.5, I would take that because I do think this is a 3-point game. But I think Penn State does end up winning the game, partially due to the wide receiver issues at Oregon and just not having their top talent, whether it be to injury or discipline issues, which we've seen. I think Penn State comes out on top because they are at home this year. And Big Game James, we can finally get over the big game hump. Last game of the week we're going to talk about is Alabama and Georgia. Georgia is a 3.5 point favorite. They're going to be hosting the Tide. The Alabama Crimson Tide, just like the Tide, have ebbed and flowed. And I don't know which Alabama we're going to get yet. If we get Alabama that played Florida State, Georgia's going to win by 20. If we get the Alabama that's, well, even when they smacked with Wisconsin, it's hard to say that that was any good because Wisconsin has looked horrible. They got smacked almost by just as much by Maryland, which is not an impressive team. I like Maryland getting better. That's awesome. They've had their ups and down years, more up when they had Tua's brother Talia. We're now in the post Talia era. I think Georgia covers the spread. I do think Georgia wins, especially with how we saw them perform against Tennessee in Tennessee. This one's at home. Talking about big home field advantage. This is one where Georgia has a home field advantage. I think the place is going to be rocking. The dogs are going to be barking. And Kirby Smart is probably my favorite coach in terms of preparing for a big game. I'm going to take the Georgia Bulldogs, and I'll take the -3.5. Next, everyone's favorite segment, at least our favorite segment, Superdogs. So, remember, we both won our picks this week, or this past week. I'm going to take Tulsa against Tulane. After what Tulsa did to Oklahoma State, obviously not that impressive because Oklahoma State is really bad. I'm gonna take Tulsa. I think they can cover a 14.5 point spread if Tulane is as bad as they were this past week. Part of that was because of Ole Miss's defense. Part of that was Tulane was just not executing. So I'm gonna try to ride the morale and the momentum of each of these. Tulsa up, Tulane down. I'm going to try to ride that. And then, like I said earlier, we look for key points. 14.5 is a great spot to be in. I'm going to go ahead and take Tulsa plus 14.5. Emory did text me his pick. And this is why I didn't give my spread pick earlier, because I can't go against my dog. We need the Huskies to cover a 10.5 point spread. I love this pick. We're both high on Washington. I'm high on Jedd Fisch, more than a lot of other coaches. And I think this game will be great. It is in Washington too, so you get the home field advantage. This is a chance for Jedd Fisch, coming from Arizona a couple of years ago, to really take that step up. And as the Kalen DeBoer replacement. Emory, fantastic pick. I'm singing my praises to you. I'm hoping we go 2-0 again, and maybe we even get an outright winner. Heisman hopefuls going into week 5. Look at the top there. Our buddy Fernando Mendoza absolutely skyrockets on here. And then as you can see, I have Lenora Sellers there, mainly because I feel bad for him because he played so well, and now he's just off the list, and he's probably not going to come back on because he just doesn't have the performance we expected or the team. And I just wanted to shout out that we can be wrong again. That being said, John Mateer in second, Carson Beck stays in third. Dante Moore up to fourth, tied with Carson Beck actually, so tied for third. Gunnar Stockton at plus 1,400. Josh Hoover plus 1,400. Aguilar plus 1,600. And then Marcel Reeds is actually plus 1,800. It did not save. But that is it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you all for joining me. Remember, we're going to have our GTD superlatives, Gamer of the Year. We're going to have our Cowboys Team of the Year, named after the Cowboys of Dallas and Oklahoma State. Thank you very much for joining me for my first solo video talking about college football. Like I said, did my best. It's a new thing, so bear with me on that. Let me know if there's any segments y'all want to watch more, any different analysis, different topics to discuss, go more in depth, less in depth on anything. I don't bring quite the analytics Emory does. I'm more of a color commentary guy who's just a really big fan. But that being said, I want to make videos on whatever y'all want to listen to, y'all want to watch, things that are entertaining. So thank you very much for joining me today. I will see y'all next week. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and enjoy your weeks. Thank you very much.